Welcome to Weekly Pulse from the USA Today Network. I'm Lorenzo Reyes. It was a dramatic weekend on the field in the NFL with so many close games, but that pales in comparison to what's taking place this Saturday in Atlanta. The NFL has organized a private workout for Colin Kaepernick. Our very own Jarrett Bell explains why this is a long time coming, and I dive into the potential best landing spots for Kaepernick. One of the teams that we know will be in attendance on Saturday is the Dallas Cowboys. We sit down with Cowboys great Darren Woodson to discuss if he thinks Jason Garrett will be back in 2020. Moving on to college football, in case you've been living under a rock, LSU won the game of the century. Our own Paul Meyerberg and Dan Wolken discussed the latest playoff rankings and if the committee got it right. And while it was discovered this week that the Astros cut corners, we won't hear with our baseball coverage. Steve Gardner previews free agency and the 5 players that will define the offseason. Let's roll.
What should Colin Kaepernick do? Number 1, know your leverage. Now, Kaepernick has been out of the NFL for 3 years now, shamefully, I might add, and it's not going to be a situation where he's going to be able to command a big mega contract. Big thing is, number 2, get your foot back in the door. Now, I don't think that's going to be a problem in terms of his desire to get back in the door because he's been exiled and he's been saying that he wants to get back into the league. Go with the team that is going to do the best job of trying to incorporate you and your skill set into that system. Number 3, carry on with your cause. Now, I don't know if Kaepernick wants to continue to kneel during the national anthem or not, but it should not be a condition for him to get back into the NFL with a job. However, Kaepernick is that guy, which means that Colin Kaepernick is someone that people will listen to when it comes to some of these societal issues, and he can use that platform wisely. Number 4, ball out. Yes, you can be a great quarterback and a social activist. You can do both.
Will we see Colin Kaepernick in an NFL uniform anytime soon? That's the big question everyone's asking after the league invited all teams to attend a workout in Atlanta. If he does return to the league, here are 5 potential landing spots. And let's start in Charlotte, where one of his former teammates and best friends is on the roster. Eric Reid has been protesting systemic oppression by kneeling during the national anthem since he arrived in Carolina, and the locker room hasn't collapsed. Reid could vouch for Kaepernick, and the QB could provide an intriguing tandem with Christian McCaffrey and be instant insurance if Kyle Allen's play dramatically dips. Next up, the Dolphins. Miami needs a long-term answer at quarterback, and it's one of the few places that could offer Kaepernick a chance to start right away. I still think the Dolphins take a quarterback in next year's draft, but if there's one spot where a team could build around Kaepernick, it's here. The Dolphins lack star power and haven't given fans much of a reason to stick around. Kaepernick instantly provides an upgrade at the position and generates serious buzz in an organization that has largely been irrelevant. The Bears might be considering options other than Mitchell Trubisky and Chase Daniel. I would make the argument that for Kaepernick to succeed anywhere, he needs to join a system that highlights his strengths and link up with a coaching staff who helps him shine. I think Matt Nagy is innovative enough and willing to experiment. Kaepernick's mobility and arm strength would give him plenty to work with. Next up are the Broncos, who have been looking for an answer at quarterback since Peyton Manning left the team. John Elway has taken his fair share of swings to find that answer, whether in the draft or through free agency. Pretty much all of them have been misses. This marriage almost happened before. What's to stop it from happening today? Kaepernick is still 32 and should have plenty of football left in him after a few seasons out of the sport. Denver is in a bit of a rebuild, but it has always emphasized a sound rushing attack. And with Kaepernick in the fold, he'd make that attack much more dynamic. Finally, this last team may be a long shot, but it's one that hasn't shied away from experimenting with veteran players with unique skill sets. And it just so happens that Tom Brady is 42 years old, and the Patriots could be gearing up for him potentially hitting the open market at the end of the season. No coach is better at maximizing a player's unique talents than Bill Belichick. And though it would require some tweaking of their playbook and their system, this is one team where I think Kaepernick could step in right away and have success. That, and it would be so much fun to watch him be the one to take over for Brady once he steps away from New England, whenever that is. This all comes with a huge caveat. NFL teams have known Kaepernick has been on the market and available. They could have worked him out whenever they wanted, and in a private setting. While this does get some momentum headed in Kaepernick's favor, I just don't think it makes a difference, and I don't think it leads to his being offered a contract, because Colin has always been there, waiting, ready to play. More than 75% of the matchups in Week 10 were decided by one score or less in what was kind of a crazy week. You had 3 one-win teams winning, and then you had a 13-point favorite getting taken down. Here are this week's risers and fallers. And let's start in New Orleans, where the Saints failed to score a touchdown and got blown out by the Falcons. Don't get this twisted, the Saints are still a legit contender in the NFC, but this looked like just another example of them laying an egg in a season in which they had the look of a special team. They already dropped one seed in the playoff picture, so they can't do it again. A riser? It has to be the Raiders. Not only did they beat the Chargers on Thursday to climb above 500, but they also got a massive boost when the Titans beat the Chiefs on Sunday. Don't look now, but Oakland is just a half game out of first in the AFC West. Another unexpected team on the rise is the Steelers. That Minkah Fitzpatrick trade is paying off immediate dividends and has shored up a position that was in desperate need of a fix. Another don't look now, but Mike Tomlin has this team holding on to the 6th and final playoff spot in the AFC. One team dropping spots is Dallas, and it just has to be absolutely maddening to be a Cowboys fan. This team seems to deal with the same issues time in and time out and never seems to fix them. Slow starts, questionable play calls late in games, game clock and game management decisions. Fair catch, anyone? That seem to just doom the Cowboys' chances. The margin of error is pretty slim, and it's pretty clear that Dallas only makes a dance if they win the NFC East. One more faller, and it's the Rams. And man, this just does not look like the same squad that won the NFC Championship last year. The running game is in tatters, the defense isn't making enough plays, and Jared Goff is regressing. A lot of issues to fix, and not much time. I'm Lorenzo Reyes, NFL reporter, and if you're looking to wager in the NFL on Week 11, look no further. And let's start in Philly, where we have a chance to see something rare. The Patriots are coming off a bye and headed to face the Eagles while getting 3.5 points as road favorites. And Bill Belichick is notorious for smoking teams coming off a bye when they're 14-5. But New England also rarely loses 2 in a row. It is 42-13 since 2001 when coming off a loss. This is the rare off a bye, off a loss white whale. It's my lock of the week. Take the Pats. I've got them winning 28-21. And for my cover, I'm going against something I normally don't do. A few weeks ago, I vowed to never take the Jets. Never. I guess that only changes when they play Washington. The Jets are getting 1 point on the road, but let's be real. FedEx Field isn't exactly known as a hostile environment. And I think Greg Williams can make life on young quarterbacks quite challenging, so I think Dwayne Haskins might be in trouble. Plus, New York has definitely underperformed, but that roster is much more talented. They should take this. I've got them winning and covering 24-17. Finally, for my over-under, let's head down to Baltimore for what I think is the game of the week. The Ravens are hosting Houston, and the line is 49.5 points. You've got Deshaun Watson on one side, and on the other, you've got MVP candidate Lamar Jackson. The Ravens have hit the over in their last 2 games, and in 6 of 9 overall. They rank first in scoring, and the Texans rank 8th. I think this is a shootout. I've got the Ravens winning 32-27.
What the College Football Playoff Selection Committee got wrong was the number 4 spot. And certainly it was tricky to figure out who belonged there, but I think Georgia is just the wrong choice. You're talking about a team that lost to South Carolina, the worst loss of all the potential candidates you could have put at number 4. Georgia certainly has their strengths. They beat Florida, they beat Notre Dame. They've got an impressive defense. Their offense is pretty pedestrian, let's be honest. And they're a good team. We know what Georgia's got to do. They've got to go win at Auburn this weekend. They've got to win the SEC title down the road. All of it's in front for them. I think certainly number 4, you should have considered Alabama. You could have considered Oregon. But I really think the team that should have been there was probably Minnesota. Undefeated, avoid bad losses to this point in the year, and they just beat Penn State, the team that last week you had ranked number 4. So I don't really understand the logic of putting Georgia there for now.
Putting LSU number 1 was a no-brainer in my mind for the selection committee. Still, good job, because it's the right pick right now to have LSU ahead of Ohio State with the Buckeyes number 2. LSU has more quality wins. They have a marquee moment beating an Alabama that Ohio State does not have at this point. What the Buckeyes have is just simply dominance, and they've been dominant. I mean, they've won every single game by 24 or more points. They dropped 73 against Maryland on Saturday. LSU overall strength of schedule, overall quality of wins, they deserve to be number 1. If they run the table, they'll stay there the rest of the way. LSU is the weekend's big winner after beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa 46-41. It snaps an 8-game losing streak to Alabama. It also showed this offense consistently at its best, yet again, had an answer for every single one of Alabama's touchdown drives in the fourth quarter. And it also just gives LSU the SEC West. And if you win the SEC West, you play at Georgia to decide the SEC, and you win that, you're in the playoff. So at this point, no longer wonder if LSU can make the playoff. I mean, Obviously they can and very likely will. It's whether anybody can stop LSU, because no one has yet. Minnesota also a big winner after they beat Penn State in Minnesota. It's a validator win for the Gophers. It's a validator for this team's talent. It's a validator for a team that was 17th in the debut playoff rankings despite being unbeaten. It's a validator for PJ Fleck because he has a lot of detractors, but he's now turned around 2 FBS programs, Western Michigan and now Minnesota. So you'll see this week where Minnesota ends up in the coaches poll and also in the playoff rankings, but they have become now, by beating Penn State, a team that you have to take seriously.
Picking the best stadiums in college football can be subjective. Obviously, your home team probably has your favorite stadium. Here are my favorite 3. First, obviously, is the Rose Bowl. I mean, the Rose Bowl, Keith Jackson called it the granddaddy of them all, and it kind of fits. Obviously, they have the Rose Bowl there every year. It's UCLA's home field. But when you're at a game, whether you're in the stands or the press box, and it's dusk and it's January 1st, and you look out across the mountains and the sun is setting, I mean, there's probably no better scene in college football. Michigan Stadium, the Big House, called the Big House because it seats like 115,000 people. I know Michigan hasn't always been the greatest program in the country. They've always been good. They haven't won a national championship in a while. Still, on a Saturday when they're playing Ohio State or Notre Dame, and there's 115,000 people in the crowd, it's a magical kind of scene for college football. And I think for Michigan, if there ever was a time when they were back to winning national championships, you'd see Michigan Stadium, the Big House, probably crowned by a lot of people as the best place to watch a game in college football. And lastly, a wild card. This place doesn't seat as many as the Big House, to be fair, but Albertson Stadium for Boise State is unique, and you probably know it from watching on a Thursday night at 1 o'clock in the morning or on a Saturday night. They've got the blue field, the blue turf. Every other stadium in the country, green turf, green grass. Boise, blue turf. It's unique. I love it.
The free agent market is open for business, but if last year is any indication, we shouldn't expect things to move very quickly, which will give us a lot of time to analyze who could possibly be going where. Here are this winter's top 5 free agents that will shape the MLB offseason. Number 1, Garrett Cole, a power pitcher extraordinaire. He had a .250 ERA last season, led the majors with 326 strikeouts, had 20 wins, led the Astros to the American League Championship. He's the guy that's looking at the biggest deal because ace pitchers are always in demand. Who could afford him is the question, though. Probably the New York Yankees. They drafted him. He didn't sign with them once upon a time. They tried to trade for him and were rebuffed. Also, the Los Angeles Angels could possibly be in play. They have a new manager in Joe Madden, and Cole is from Southern California. Number 2, Anthony Rendon, an MVP candidate and elite offensively and defensively. He's coming off a career year and a World Series title, so what a time to hit the free agent market. The Washington Nationals would dearly love to have him back, but is that price going to be too steep for them? If they don't, look for the Texas Rangers to be in play. Rendon is from Texas and went to college at Rice. Or if he's willing to take a shorter-term deal, the Los Angeles Dodgers or several other teams could come into play. Number 3, Steven Strasburg, coming off career highs in wins and strikeouts, capped by a dominant showing in October and a World Series MVP award. Strasburg opted out of his deal with the Washington Nationals, but is still a pretty good bet to re-sign there. He's comfortable in D.C. and doesn't mind being out of the spotlight. But what could entice him to leave? Going home to San Diego. That's where he grew up, that's where he went to college. Or possibly teams that don't sign Garrett Cole could turn to Strasburg as plan B. Number 4, Zach Wheeler. He's the youngest starter on the market at age 29, and he doesn't have a whole lot of mileage either because he missed the 2015 and 2016 seasons recovering from Tommy John surgery. He's durable and he does still have plenty of upside. Wheeler's a prototypical power pitcher, throwing 97 miles per hour as his average fastball. Only 3 other starters, Noah Syndergaard, Garrett Cole, and Jacob deGrom, average higher. Who are the best fits? Well, certainly the Houston Astros will need somebody to fill Garrett Cole's spot in their rotation. The Washington Nationals, if they don't re-sign Strasburg, could be in the mix. Also, the Philadelphia Phillies seem to have a lot of money to spend. Dark horses, possibly the Brewers, and the rebuilding Chicago White Sox. Number 5, Josh Donaldson. The only former MVP on the free agent market. He took a 1-year deal last year with the Atlanta Braves, and it paid off big time. He stayed healthy and produced on offense and defense. Donaldson will be 34, but he's still an impact player, and for teams that miss out on Rendon, Donaldson is not a bad consolation prize. Who could that be? The Braves certainly would love to have him back. The Nationals, if Rendon leaves, will need a third baseman. The Rangers, the Phillies, and the Angels could also be in play.
Let's talk about the Cowboys. It's been a very streaky season. 3 wins to start the season, 3 losses, including 1 to the Jets.
Yes.
What is the Cowboys? Who are they this year?
We're still trying to figure that out, Larry. I think the one thing we've seen is that they've been inconsistent. Early in the season they go 3-0, and then they have a 3-game skid. And if you want to be a championship team, you can't lose to the teams that you're supposed to beat. And when they go on the road, they got to do what they do best, and that's run the football and play to their identity. And they haven't done that consistently.
What about Xavier Woods? He was the defensive player of the week. It's been a sore spot for the Cowboys since you retired, the safety position. How would you assess his play?
I got a tear, man, dropping right now. I mean, we've had so many problems at the safety position over the years, and right now you're watching Xavier Woods come into his own, and I'm proud, man. I'm crying. I was emotional when I was watching him make those big plays.
It seemed for a little while that he may have company back there at the safety position, Jamal Adams. What's your thoughts on the Cowboys not acquiring him?
Well, listen, I think there was a lot to give, for Jamal Adams. And listen, he's a phenomenal football player. He's a once-in-a-lifetime type of talent. He's a guy that I definitely wanted the Cowboys to try to go out there and get, but you couldn't give up. The asking price was too much. I think it's a process where you have to wait this out. You can't give up the house knowing you still have to sign Amari Cooper. You have to sign Dak Prescott to his big deal. And now you're bringing a guy like Jamal Adams. We're in the cap space. How much cap space are you going to have at the end of the day? Would they like to have him? Would I personally love to have Jamal Adams? Absolutely, and I'm sure the Jet fans will be upset about that, but at the same time, you can't give up the house to get one player.
Of course, Adams is a safety. You were, of course, an outstanding safety. But what about the importance of the safety position? Here in New York, when there was talk about Adams getting dealt, everybody's like, wow, he's a little bit of a diva. But he plays the safety position. He's not a corner. He's not a left tackle. He's not a receiver. He's not a quarterback. What about the importance of the safety in 2019?
Well, I don't know if it's so much about Jamal Adams playing the safety position. I think it's about who he is as a football player. And it doesn't matter if you're safety or corner. If you can bring the leadership qualities that he brings, the tenacity that he brings. Listen, I played against guys like Brian Dawkins, John Lynch, Roy Butler, those type of players. They're game-changing players in the 90s and the 2000s, and they meant so much to their football team, not just because they made plays, because of the tenacity that they brought. And when you watch Jamal Adams play, he's going to make a game-changing play, and that inspires everyone, all 53 men on that football team, and he's the heart and soul of that locker room. So at some things, you can't worry so much about the position. You worry about the player himself, and he's a damn good football player. Yeah.
How much fun is it to be a Dallas Cowboy? You played a dozen years with the team. How much fun are these guys having?
They're having fun, but there's a lot of pressure. Let's think about it. This team, the Cowboys, haven't won a Super Bowl since '95, '96 season. I mean, it's been a long time since this team has been to the pinnacle. And you can imagine the pressure that's on Dak, the pressure that's on Zeke, and this entire offensive line that's been together for a number of years to get back to those glory days. And you got veteran guys, former football players like myself, former Cowboys, myself, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, who are looking at these guys saying, hey, it's time to get back. It's time to win those Super Bowls. So there's a lot of pressure on this football team. It's great to be a Dallas Cowboy, but you got to understand the pressure that goes along with being that. If they don't win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years, then again, that window of opportunity is going to close and they're going to start all over again.
The one constant from the Aikman era up until now is Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
He was the owner of the Cowboys when you were playing, and of course he's still the owner.
Right.
How has he changed, if at all, since those early years of his ownership?
I wouldn't say Jerry has changed much. I think you're seeing the growth of Stephen Jones come up, his son come up through the system, and you're starting to see Stephen take more of a role in day-to-day operations as it pertains to football. And not only that, Will McClay is the GM, the acting GM. You're starting to see Will McClay make a lot of good football decisions as far as building that offensive line, drafting guys like Zeke, Dak Prescott, Will McClay is phenomenal in what he's doing, and I think you're starting to see Jerry take his hands off and trust the right people. There was a time where Jerry was basically making all the picks and really being active as far as the GM. Now you're starting to see that role, him back off that role, and allow football people to make football decisions.
Talking about you, Jerry Jones said, quote, "He's a living, breathing example of the saying that character does matter." Bill Parcells called you the epitome of a professional. When you look at today's game and you see some of the headlines that go on, some of the bad stuff that happens with the players, how does that make you as a brother in the fraternity, how does that make you feel?
It's tough because, you hear the headlines and you see all the negativity that's portrayed, and you have individuals, you might have one individual on a football team that makes a bad decision. But that doesn't speak to the other 52 players in that locker room who are out serving the community, who are doing the right things. I look at Dak Prescott as a guy, Sam Darnold as another. Great guys, not only on the field, but off the field, that serve the community, do the right things. There are a lot of good men out there that are doing good things. So I don't so much worry about that. I really don't, because I know I've been in those locker rooms. I know it's a microcosm of the society. You're going to have a bad apple here and there, but you rally around the other 52 who are doing the right thing.
Is there peer pressure when a teammate does something, runs afoul of the law?
Yeah, it's no different than being in, the locker room is no different than being in corporate America. There's going to be issues. You're going to have someone that's going to run into some issues. The question is, how does leadership handle that? Meaning leadership from the top to the bottom. And when I say the top, that's ownership. How are they dealing with the individual player? How's the coaching staff dealing with that individual player? What advice are they giving them? And then, how is your locker room built? And that's what makes you look at a team like the New England Patriots, that's what makes them special, because you have Robert Kraft, Bill Belichick, and then the pecking order, it goes Kraft, Belichick, and then you have Tom Brady, and they hold their players to a higher standard. And I think that's what you want to see. That's how you want to see your locker room built. And that's how our locker room was built in the 90s, was you had a guy named Troy Aikman, and he served, and he was the pillar, and everything flowed through him, and that's what made us great.
And now there's another quarterback who's leading the way, which is Jason Garrett.
Yeah.
In addition to Dak, but Jason Garrett, I mean, how many times can we hear that he's on the hot seat?
We'll always hear that he's on the hot seat. When you're the Dallas Cowboys head coach, you're always going to be in the news. And that's part of it. And Jason Garrett understood that when he took the job, that his job was always going to be on the hot seat. And his job will never change until he wins the Super Bowl. So he has to win the big game in order for him to get off that seat.
Final question. What would it mean to you to make the Hall of Fame?
It'd be awesome. I mean, that's, why we play the game. That's the reason, I signed up for this game when I was, in 7th and 8th, when I was 7 years old. My goal was to always have that jacket and be considered one of the greatest to ever play. And that's what, listen, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of players that are deserving of being in the Hall of Fame, but individually, it would be a great honor, because I know, how I played back in the 90s and in early 2000. I felt like I had a Hall of Fame career, and, to be up there with those players in Canton, that'd be a dream come true.
We are in the heart of November, and that means great football every weekend. The Big 12 takes center stage on Saturday with Oklahoma Baylor. The winner of this game will no doubt be in the conversation for a spot in the college football playoff. In the NFL, we have two matchups that are must-see TV. Deshaun Watson versus Lamar Jackson. Do I need to say anything else? Then, later in the day, the Patriots head to Philly for a rematch of Super Bowl 52. Expect another classic. Stick with Weekly Pulse, your heartbeat to what's trending in sports. Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and stick around for more from USA Today Sports.